Welcome to Not Safe for Work Romance, where authors take you behind the scenes in our little corner of the romance writing world. I'm Eris Adderley.
And I'm Shane Starrett, and we write the kinds of books that embarrass you in front of your relatives, and sometimes your friends, too.
Our episode today, Why Romance, where we'll be talking about why Shane and I ended up writing the romance genre and what continues to draw us to creating deviously dark character put into oh-so-sexy situations.
So, I know we touched a little bit upon this in our episode, but I think tonight, the way I see this is that we're going to dive a little bit deeper into specifically, once we started writing or reading romance, what was it that actually genre? I mean, I think you said in the last episode that you actually didn't originally start reading romance or erotic romance. You were more into science fiction and fantasy. Is that correct?
That is correct. I did not, I can't think of anything I read that qualified as romance 100%.
But you did mention literotica, and if I'm not mistaken, I guess what was the impetus for you to even go to literotica? What were you reading, or what did you look for? What sparked you to even go that direction?
Because I'm a big old perv, and I wanted some fab material. And sometimes I don't know always what you like. I don't know. I know a lot of people like to have the stereotype that women read books and men look at porn. And I'm sure we will get into that later in one of our other episodes. I really don't like stereotyping by gender that way. Listen, I watch plenty of the naked people doing the naked people things. But sometimes I want to read, I want a little more than, sometimes I just want to see the gross images and be like, yes, this is great. But sometimes I would like some plot to go with my, naughty things that I'm interested in.
Right.
So I would go to lit, and it was really on and off. It wasn't like I was consistently there, every week or whatever. It was just on and off. I'd be like, oh, I'll go back to I didn't even have an account for a long time. I was just, anonymous person. I didn't comment. I would just read things here and there.
Right. Okay.
But then I would see, some stories that would get good reviews, I would discover were part of longer stories. They were, multi-chapters. It wasn't just, 20-minute read.
Right.
And some of those had much better plots than just, hey, these people are going to fuck. And I started getting interested in those more. So I think that's where I started. And, a lot of the plots are romantic. Not all of them.
Yeah, but there are a fair number.
Right.
And at that point, were you actually then starting to notice specific authors? Were you gravitating to those?
There were some. At a certain point, I did finally make an account. I think I made an account I made an account 2 or 3 years before I started writing, but I did start wanting to bookmark things. So that's why I did it. And so, I'd save authors that I liked or, certain stories that I liked.
Okay. And then from there, when you did finally then decide, well, I'm going to start writing, because you did explain a little bit, you kind of told a little story about, well, I think I could do that, or I could do better than that. It was just at that point, then it was just naturally, that's the genre I'm going to start writing in. Because I take it from our previous conversation that you never had a similar sort of experience, say, with science fiction or with fantasy, although you have written both of those genres in the sense that you've written romance stories that are science fiction and romance stories that are fantasy based.
Right.
But you didn't go, and I hate to even use this kind of terminology, you didn't go pure science fiction.
Right. No, I did not. And having been asked the question and having to think about it, probably it's a combination of, it's just I was already reading kind of, dirty stories. So I was like, this seems like a logical place for me to, I can write like this, you know what I mean? Right. And also in the job that I had at the time, which was for the adult toy company, part of the job was, as we put new products up on the website, which was several a week, I was the one who had to write all the descriptions for them. And some of them had ad copy that the vendors sent us if they were the bigger vendors that had their shit together. But a lot of them did not. A lot of it was private label stuff we got from China or whatever. So it was up to me to write a paragraph about a fucking dildo as long as someone's arm and make it sound awesome. And so just every week, 10, like at least the goal was 10 products a week. So just imagine every week for a couple of years, I just would write descriptions of all kinds of sex toys and BDSM gear because the company was geared towards fetish and BDSM. And so I was already in the zone of having to write about, stuff
Dildos.
that is titillating. I hate that word. I think it sounds so silly. But having to write that content of it's adult content, you're trying to arouse the person because you want them to purchase the toy.
Right.
So, that is the goal, to arouse someone. So I was like, it just seemed like the foundation there.
Right. It was a natural extension.
Right.
And see, for me, I was always writing what I will still call romance stories because, as I explained in the last episode when I was talking a little bit about this, I always wrote for Cynthia. So, of course, I'm writing for the woman that I love, the woman that I've been married to, now for 31 years. And so the stories were always romantic. And yes, they were erotic too. So even though I wasn't thinking of myself at that time as a romance writer, the stories were, as I look back on them and I think about them, they were romance-based stories. So,
and even if it's still kind of romance in the larger sense, in that you were creating it as a gift for someone you love, even if the story wasn't, technically a romance.
Yeah, so. Exactly. And I did write at the time, or years ago, I wrote one science fiction story. But like I explained, even that story, as it started to evolve and grow, it started off as what I was considering like a pure science fiction. And it just, it went off the rails in a sense because all of a sudden there was this these romantic elements.
There's a relationship happening.
Yeah.
Relationships in my science fiction, it's more likely than you think.
Exactly. That's exactly what. And so I've never actually, as a writer, steered away from that. That's just what I've always written. And I've read a ton of other genres, fantasy and science fiction and history, and crime thrillers and things of those natures, like Tom Clancy and Stephen King. But when it came to writing, I would take all of those disparate elements that I would pick up sometimes from these other genres and writers, and my stories always ended up in some fashion or another having romance elements to them. So that's how I started. And I hate to even use the term started. It's just, it was what I did. It was what I wrote. And I never stopped.
It wasn't even a decision. You're just like, this is what I want to write about. It's happening.
Exactly. Which I've always been fascinated about as I've come into our community and become a part of it, that there aren't more male writers. I thought at the time when I first got into the community, I'm sure I'll stumble across another male author. And I have met a few.
They're out there.
You
can find them.
They're out there. But by and large, we're the outlier. We're not the core of the romance authors are by and large.
This is true.
Women. But it fascinates me that for some reason I'm doing this and I'm being accepted for doing it. I'm not being shunned. I've never once felt like, you don't belong here. I may have thought that myself. I've certainly had that imposter syndrome, but no one has actually said to me or approached me and said, well, you really shouldn't be doing this.
Well, first of all, you belong.
Well, and that's the way you and others, readers especially, have made me feel, which is very empowering. And I have to say, it's also unusual because
I have opinions on this, but maybe later in the thing we can talk about that.
It's unusual, and I do too. And I'm bringing it up now because I am speaking as a male author in a predominantly female genre
Right. Like written mostly by women, mostly for women readers.
Right. Exactly.
Like not intentionally, I think it just happens. Like it's just happening. Like when I write my books, I'm not like women will love this. And
right.
That's not how I think about it when I'm writing. And I'm sure you don't think about it either. You're just like, I want to write this story.
Right. And I want to write it as well as I possibly can. And I want it to appeal to everyone. And I wish there were more male readers, and I wish there were more male authors, because this is a genre. We talk about why romance. I said before, I've read a lot of science fiction. I've read a lot of history. I've read a lot of fantasy. And let's face it, there's some pretty big names out there in the fantasy world that are male, and they write from a very male perspective. And you and I have even had discussions about this. I wish that there were more male authors and more male readers, because romance is a very, very, very empowering genre. It is not a genre that typically is hugely misogynistic, it talks down to women, or puts women in roles that are demeaning.
Yeah, they're not usually the token role, like, well, we have to have a woman on our ragtag crew. Good grammar. A woman on our ragtag crew of misfits.
The one woman, and she's got to be sexy, and she has to be saved and protected from something. It's
like none of the dudes have a love interest, but for some reason she's got a love interest. Like
exactly. Or if it's a love interest, it's one of the dudes on the crew, and everyone else is okay with it because, he's a great guy.
Yeah, because when there's a group of people and it's all dudes and one chick, it never happens that more than one of them is interested in the chick and drama ensues. Never happens.
No. It would never happen that way in real life. So why should it in a book? Right?
Okay.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a genre that is very empowering, because I have a huge thing for strong women.
There are children listening, Shane. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, okay. Well, this has been a great episode. Next time, folks.
Next time, we'll talk more about Shane's huge thing anyway.
Oh, my God.
Anyway, sorry. Finish your sentence. I'm not mature. No. I am not mature.
Listen, it is such that it is a genre that is empowering to women and allows us to level the playing field, so to speak. And I love that. I love being able to read about strong women in a genre where they're not put into secondary roles, typically. I love writing about it. Every one of the books that I've written has the, I don't want to say the heroine, but yeah, sure, the heroine is a strong, empowered woman who does not kneel or play second fiddle to the hero,
right,
or the anti-hero or whatever. And that to me is part of what drew me, because I married a extremely strong woman.
Yes, indeed.
She is very intelligent. She has a master's degree. She's worked in fields that are oddly enough, aside from education, the fields that she's worked in are predominantly male-dominated fields, and she's excelled at it. And that is something. I mean, I'm not going to hide it or sugarcoat it. It is something that's very attractive to me. So when I started writing, I of course always wrote Cynthia as a strong female. I never wrote down to her or wrote her as being less than what she is in real life. And I love reading that in other stories. And in romance, you get that. You don't get that in other genres, unfortunately.
As much. I mean, sometimes.
Yes, you're right.
But as much. And sometimes, it's, unfortunately, a lot of that will hinge on if the author is a woman.
Right.
But not always. Like, I don't, we were having a discussion the other day about a well-known series, and that I was saying to you a similar beef about, the female character and the problems that I was kind of thinking that were going on. But, I've read other books that I did not have those kind of thoughts about. So, I mean, it's not an impossible thing.
No, and I shouldn't make it sound like it's universal, but
it does happen a lot. It does. It's like the default is dude.
Yeah.
And without going, this is not a political show, but let's be honest, the default is, straight white dude. Yeah. I'm just saying.
No, it is.
What, and then everything else is considered a political statement. It's like, I don't know. You can look at demographics of the whole entire world. That is probably not the majority of people. So.
Right.
Anyway, exactly. Not to go on a tangent.
Yeah, no, I don't. And again, but it colors you as a reader. First of all, that's how I started as a reader. I kept looking for these things in other stories and other genres. And I was like, well, I'm not finding them. And then eventually, when I did find romance, aside from like the romances that my mother had read years and years and years and years and years ago, that were the bodice rippers, which still did have a very, I don't want to say misogynistic, but in those stories, yes, it was the handsome, virile, strong, studly guy.
And she always has to get saved and all that stuff.
Right. So those kind of reinforced that stereotype that I didn't have an interest in. But then as time went on and I came back to this genre, I started finding these authors, and I found some of the authors that we talked about in the last episode. And I was like, no, this is what I was waiting for. This is what I want.
Right.
And then it also made me feel like, wow, okay, so there are other people out here writing these kinds of stories like I have been writing myself.
Yeah, like, I'm not crazy. Right. I'm not like the one weirdo doing this in the dark of night, like, oh no, I'm so bizarre. Like, there are other people like me. Yeah.
That like these kinds of stories, that like strong, empowered women that are standing up for themselves and are perfectly capable of rescuing themselves and all of those things, such as I was.
And have lives going on that aren't necessarily
hinged
completely
upon
their relationship. Now, I'm not saying, and look, I'm not saying I haven't written stuff that is not like the focus is the relationship, because honestly, that is one of the criteria for something being a romance.
Yes.
That the plot be focused on a relationship and that it have a happy ending. And I know there's like at least one more big one, but I forget what it is right now.
But still, in your stories and in other authors who I was attracted to when I first came into this, the woman isn't like waiting around for someone to rescue her, or she's has a demeaning job or a lesser job, and he's, even though we do have that trope about the billionaire, the millionaire, or whatever, it's not, even in those stories where that occurs, she's still typically always a very strong, independent woman who, in a lot of cases, basically tells the guy, I don't give a fuck about your money.
Right.
If you want to be with me and you want to be in a relationship with me, you have to treat me like an equal. If you think I'm just going to fall at your feet because you got $1 billion, that ain't happening. And that was what I was like, yes, that's what I want. And that's what I found. And then I thought, then I'm
glad you found it, because then we got to be friends.
Exactly. And I got to actually find people who said, yeah, your stories are good. And it wasn't just, like we said in the last episode, it wasn't just Cynthia. I found other people who said, yeah, your stories are good. I like what you're writing. I like these characters. I think, you should be doing this. You should be enjoying it. And that was incredibly empowering. And I don't think that I would have necessarily found that writing the kinds of stories that I write if I had tried to write them in science fiction or in
fantasy
or
crime
thriller. I don't think that would have been the case. I probably would have found myself being basically said, well, why are you having, all these sexy times? That's not really what we do in here. And
that's not what we do here.
Right. That's not what we do here. We don't really do that sort of thing.
Right.
And because a lot of people in some of those other genres do get turned off by that.
Yes, they do.
And we've experienced that. I think we've talked about it too, is that is something that in some groups you still even find. It's like, well, why was there all this sex in this book? There should, that's not what this book should be about. And it's
that's something that constantly amazes me. And I get it. If that's not the focus of the book, then like it could be in there or not be in there. I'm not going to get all, my feathers ruffled if, it's in there. I don't care.
Right. But we don't want it shoehorned in there. And if it is in there and it serves a purpose, it shouldn't be disparaged for it being in there. If it's an integral part of the story, it should be in there. If the story is about the relationship between two people, it should be in there. It shouldn't be done off screen, in my opinion, because it lessens the power of the story. And that's one of the things I love about romance is the stories tend to be very powerful. They're not just about fighting and gunning people down or dry details about how many military units went here or there. And I read a lot of that. And I never felt connected with few exceptions. I never felt connected to that I was reading the same way I feel connected to books in the romance genre.
Yeah.
Because they are about relationships and feelings and emotions and two people coming together and falling in love and having sex. And to me, those are very powerful motivators to draw me as a reader into a world. And they're also powerful motivators as an author for things that I want to write about. Now, you began writing romance, as you explained a little bit earlier in this episode, because of where you were working and you were already writing sexy copy.
Right.
And you were reading things off of Literotica. So talk to me a little bit about why romance. Why did you continue to do that? Why did you not stay at some point, take off and go, well, you know what? I think I'm going to write some just pure fantasy now.
Well, I suppose I can't just be like, because I'm lazy. I will couch that and explain myself. But again, I didn't even set out to write necessarily romance. I legit set out to write smut. And then I just... As I know myself later as an author, if something is a sentence on my outline, it's 2,000 words on the page. I'm very wordy. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to write something sexy. Well, if 40,000 words later, you know what I mean? It's a whole story. Like my brain was just like, you can't just do this. There's got to be reasons. There's got to be a plot. There's got, and it just sort of happened that it was right. Like it just became a romance. And I'm like, okay. And I've kept going on it because honestly, it's about human interaction. Like I'm fascinated with the way human beings interact.
Yes.
I mean, not just romantically, other ways as well. Like all of it. It's just, we are just some messed up monkeys, man. Like,
yeah,
it's fascinating.
It is.
Obviously I do not have any formal training or degrees in psychology or anything like that, but all of that aspect is very fascinating to me. And since forever, probably even before puberty, like I've always been fascinated by sex. Just not just the physical doing of it. Like that's kind of, I don't want to say neither here nor there, but the psychology behind why do people want to do a certain thing a certain way? Like why?
And why?
I wouldn't have had words at the time when I was a lot younger to put around this, but now as an adult, I can say, why does someone have this particular kink? You know what I mean? Like, what is the psychology at play here? Like, why is this interesting? Like, I will read almost anything. Like, there's a few things that are definitely not my kink, but if somebody's like, oh, this was good, I'll read it and see. Like, if there's been something that I just stopped in mid thing and went, I can't even finish this. I don't know what it is right now. I read crazy shit and stuff that was like, I would not seek it out.
Right. But if it's...
I'm intellectually interested in it. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Like, I want to know what makes people tick in relationships. Yeah. And specifically, I'm obsessed with the whole sexual thing. Like,
yeah.
So that was part of it. And then the romance part is just the relationships, I guess. Right. Like, that is what I am just concerned with the dynamic between people.
Right.
Two people or multiple people or whatever's going on. And you were talking about earlier with you know, in certain circles how it's just, they're sexy. It's almost like if they discover a sex scene in the book, like now there's a fly in the ointment.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like the whole thing is ruined now, apparently. And my question is always, listen, we're not ignorant of the fact that there is a portion of the population that like we're all with, you know, sexuality is a big giant, not even a spectrum. I don't even know what the word we're using now, but like, you know, there's people that are not interested in having sex at all. People are ace floating around out there. You know, there's people that aren't interested. But let us say that probably in the majority, most people are interested in having some kind of sexual something.
Right. Okay. In some fashion or another.
Right. So, and for those people who usually are, it is kind of like a big chunk of life thinking about, am I having it? Who am I having it with? How is it? Is it good? Is this healthy? Is it, what's going on with my relationship? Like we all are, you know, unless you live in a cave somewhere, we all are involved in relationships. You know what I mean? Like Absolutely. It's inescapable. So I don't understand what is I do understand, but I balk at trying to understand what is the big problem, like with having sex be in books. It's such a part of life. Why is it suddenly, we got to get squeamish and weird about it, and that's naughty, and that somehow devalues it? And I think we both know that that is like just a giant cultural shame umbrella about all of that stuff. And I am sure that that is what is like filtering down, and everybody might couch it in intellectual language and try to act like it's some other reason. But I'm pretty sure that it's just, you know, the giant cultural shame put on us about sexual things at all.
The Puritan.
Right. It's naughty. It's bad. You're bad for thinking about it. You're bad for doing it. Like,
and you know. It's maddening because we've talked about this in relationship to something else, which is in our author circles. People seem to have no problem with violence. You can have the bloodiest, goriest, most violent movie.
Right. And that's fine. And it's fine for young children to see, apparently.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's fine to create games. We can have video games where you're hacking people's heads off and taking machine guns and mowing people down or driving cars through cities and just running over people and shooting.
Right. But if you see one nipple on the Super Bowl,
that's right.
Like the apocalypse has now happened, right? Like
and humanity, children are going to suddenly start running through the streets naked, and it will be chaos and madness.
Right. It's all going to fall apart. So I'm sure that we could go on, and I'm sure most people that are interested in this podcast are we're probably preaching to the choir here. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree, but it is part of what I think, at least for me, drives me in a certain sense towards this genre is because I hate that.
Yeah, I hate it too. And I want to explore all those things that everybody's like, you're not supposed to. And and the other thing that, because as I've been talking about, I ended up in the romance part of it kind of, I don't want to say accidentally, but kind of. Like I never sat down and was like, I need to write romance. That's not to say it wasn't there, like latent, like when I would consume other entertainment, and let's say it's a TV series or another book or whatever, and there could be some characters, and I'm like, these two need to get together. And whether they did or not, my brain was like, I need to see this. You know what I mean? Like, and sometimes I'd be very blatant. I'd be watching TV with my husband. I'm like, those two need to fuck. You know what I mean? So,
I wish they would get together. Oh my God.
So that was there, I'm sure. Yeah. But the whole other thing with the fact that romance is considered like this is a thing for women. Like the same way if you watch, they've gotten better over the years, but the same way in general, if you watch TV ads for like house cleaning products, and it's always a woman cleaning the thing. You know what I mean? Like, it's romance is a woman's thing. And I'm just like, why though? Like, men aren't supposed to care about relationships? Are these the language? And that is, so I'm just like, are these motherfuckers married? Like, you got wives. Like, no wonder your wives are pissed off, because what we're saying with that culturally is that men shouldn't care or shouldn't have to care about relationships, like romance. Like, that's just not a thing that's important to men, apparently. And it's like, I think we all, anybody who's married knows that that shit is not true.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, or your marriage is probably not so fun as you think it is.
Right.
Probably not for your spouse.
Right. Exactly. And honestly, in a good, healthy relationship, that is just so much bullshit. Because if you're in a good, healthy relationship, you know you are talking about that relationship a lot. Right. In fact, that's what helps define, in my opinion, a good, healthy relationship, is you are talking to your spouse, and not just about sex, although certainly that is a part of it, but you're talking about how you're feeling. How you're working through your problems together, whether it's your relationship problems or, it's one partner's problem and the other one's being supportive, Exactly. And when you're trying to work shit out, man, like. Exactly. And when you read romance, you see that happening, because that's what we write about. It's part of the reason and somebody could prove me wrong and tell me, no. But it's part of the reason why for so many people, a happily ever after or a happy for now is important, because you want to see in those relationships that are created on the page that these people have communicated together and they've worked a problem out and now they're happy. Right. You don't really want satisfaction at the end. Right. You don't really, even me as a writer, although I've read some books that have not had the happily ever after or the happy for now, but you feel kind of like, okay, so yeah, I kind of get where this author is going, and yeah, this kind of didn't work out. And yeah, that's realistic, because sometimes in relationships, it doesn't work out and two people, go their own separate ways. But I always feel a little bit like cheated. Yeah, a little bit. You feel like a little bit ripped off. And I get, like, listen, both of us, I think, our reading tastes are broad. Yeah. You know what I mean? So I've read plenty of stuff that does not end happily. But most of it is it's not romance. You know what I mean? Exactly. Like it's something else. And that's fine. I don't have to, argue with what labels the community wants to put on things. That's fine. But people are not reading romance. And again, I'm sure we'll have a whole other episode about this. But people are not reading romance as an instruction guide to life or a documentary of life. People are reading romance because they're trying to escape the existential horror that is everyday living. They are trying to, that's a little dramatic, but people are trying, it's escape entertainment. Right. You're speaking specifically about. You want to enjoy yourself. The year 2020. Oh, yeah. 2020. Yeah. Anybody listening to this in the future, if we're still alive and not in Bartertown, it's escape fiction, and that's why we're reading it. And so we want the payoff. We want dessert at the end. We want our comfort food. That is why we're reading the damn thing. Like, everything does not have to mimic the horror. And I say this even with dark romance, because the person reading it, even if the content is like, oh, that's pretty awful, like, they're still reading that content as a escape from their normal reality. Like, I'm going to go into this alternate, different place where I don't live, where it's even maybe the horror concept is fascinating to them. Why do people read horror? It's still escapist, but they're still entertained. You know what I mean? Exactly. So it's escape fiction, and I don't think escape fiction needs to conform to what the hell reality is. I really don't. If you want to, great, but I don't think that, people should be poo-pooed for not doing it. Yeah, and in fact, I would posit that in romance, because it is escape fiction, that not having it be always, true to life or 100% realistic is part of the purpose of it to begin with, because that would mean that in a lot of cases, the stories would be extremely short in some cases. Right. Or they wouldn't, more importantly, they wouldn't allow us as authors to explore the dynamics between people put in some horrific situations. And that's what a lot of dark romance especially does is, first of all, it allows us to explore those dark parts of our mind, and most people have them. Even the most pious person in the world has at some level something that is what I call dark.
I was thinking that the other day when I was puttering around the house, because I'm like, a lot of people are like, oh, this is wrong. You should not be writing this content. No one should be reading this content. Or even if they're not outright, saying that you shouldn't, they're like, oh, well, this is, setting feminism back, or it's creating this problem or that problem.
Right.
I'm like, people are lying to themselves. And I'm not saying everybody, my yum is everybody's yum secretly, because that is, it's not. We're all different. Okay.
Right.
But the same people that will poo-poo this are the first people to, a news story is floating along Facebook or wherever they're consuming, and it's about, oh, this woman was like raped and they found her later and her body was in an RV or whatever. Like, they all click that shit so fast.
Yes.
And it's like, they're fascinated by this stuff. And I think probably because we're all kind of like weirded out by our own mortality. So I think people are fascinated with like a lot of dark stuff. But at the same time, they would not admit to themselves that's why they clicked on that link. But it's like, you hear the most awful shit, and that will get clicked on immediately.
Well, yeah, that's
basket of kittens rescued does not get as many clicks. Well, maybe for me, because I'm a sucker, but for cats. But you see the point.
No, I do. It's like the Don Henley song, "Dirty Laundry." That's what attracts people. People want to hear about the horrific, about the terrible thing that happened to so and so. What was the thing that was the really super popular here? Tiger King.
Tiger King. Yeah, exactly. It's disaster porn. Like, they want to see that shit, and some of it may be reassuring themselves about the safety that they have. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Or because you get that reaction. Well, thank God. Like, I thought my life was bad, but this,
Right. At least I didn't get sucked into something like this, or at least
I didn't get my arm bit off by a tiger. You know what I mean?
Right. But the fact is that if it's something that's real, a lot of people seem to be able to say, well, that was real, but it wasn't me. And I was just reading the news or educating myself or whatever.
But when it's a fiction,
yes,
and it's entertainment, then it's like, oh no, we got the naughty finger now.
Right. You can't be reading that. You shouldn't be reading that. That's terrible. And it's like, so if I wrote this story and said, this is a real story, I'm a journalist now. I'm not Shane Sterrett, the author. I'm Shane Sterrett, the journalist. And here's my story. And people would go, oh, yeah. Oh, and they'd be like flipping the pages as fast as they could. But the thing is like, no, this isn't real. This is a fantasy that I made up. It's like, oh, no, well, no, you can't do that. Oh, no.
Right. No. Because people want to police what you can think about.
Yeah,
and there's also an assumption, too, that if people are reading about it and being entertained by whatever fiction, then that must mean the person approves of that in real life.
Exactly.
It's like, I've read horror novels and like them. It does not mean I want to go kill people. That is, nonsense. It's the same of like, well, if you watch violent video games, you're going to go kill people. I'm like,
exactly. That's and that just doesn't happen. It's never been true.
Yeah, not about music with crazy lyrics, not about movies, not, and in any case where anything was an influence, that person was probably already having, struggles.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that was, that was probably going to happen regardless.
Absolutely.
This whole "the devil made me do it" thing is just bananas. Anyway, I feel like we are getting a bit off topic with all this. But I mean, it's close to both of our hearts because that is why we're so passionate about writing these stories. And we get so defensive when people are like, this is bad and you can't have this. You're not allowed to have this.
Well, yeah. And I think it is important if our audience wants to know why we're writing romance. These kinds of things that we're talking about right now are the reason why we're writing romance. I think it's hard for anyone to expect an author to not write about things that they are passionate about at their core. So I'm certain that Stephen King was passionate about writing horror stories because that's what excited him. That's what he found as a writer thrilling to write about. The same way that, any author would write about their particular genre.
Right? Like, I'm sure Anne Rice is fascinated with, like, historical esoterica and occult things.
Right. And I'm trying to think. C.J. Sherry, who's a very famous female science fiction author, she's even talked about, I wrote about these things because these are the kinds of stories that I felt passionate about.
And you have to, because I mean, I think your readers will feel it if you're not into it. Like if you're just cranking out material, I think they will feel your own boredom within the pages.
Your lack of passion. They will notice your lack of passion. I mean, I've read some history authors who, Charles MacDonald, very famous a World War II historian, he's very passionate about writing about that particular time period. Because he's passed now. But it showed as compared to some other authors who you could tell were just cranking out a story because there was a time when those kinds of stories in that particular genre were really popular and they sold. And
the people at publishing houses that were making choices about what manuscripts to pick up were like, well, we sold a crap ton of copies of this book, so give me more of those, you know?
Right, exactly. And we talk, even in our genre, we talk about writing to market. We can, there's nothing wrong with an author writing to market as long as they're passionate about that.
Right. I'm not going to look down on what anybody wants to write, even if they are just like, look, I'm just making a living, man. Like, I'm just writing what's, good for you. I'm not going to tell you not to do that, like, or look down on you.
Right. Neither am I. But if you do it well, it's probably because there's something about
some interest.
Yeah, there's some interest, or you've honed your craft. You've spent time and you've honed your craft well enough to be able to write that particular genre and write it well enough that readers are like, yes, give me more. If you're cranking out garbage, and we've seen it, we've experienced it, and we've seen it, and we've had numerous discussions about it online. There are people that have fallen afoul of it. It's because they're not passionate about it. They're either using a particular method, or we've heard the horror stories about they're hiring Fiverr guys to slap stuff together by cobbling bits and pieces from other authors. And, there's a lot of that kind of stuff out there, and they're just trying to make a quick buck.
Right. And in any system, you're always going to have the con artists that show up. I mean, that's just every system there is. If there's human beings involved, some con artists will show up. That's just how it goes.
And find a way to make a buck off of it.
When other people are working hard, someone will always be trying to game the system.
Right. So we're not doing that because we're passionate about romance, and it's what we want to do. And that's what I think is one of the big reasons why when we talk about why romance, it's because it is what we're passionate about.
Right. It's also why I don't know. I guess someone outside of myself could examine my body of work and decide whether I've written to market or not. But that is not a thing that is forefront in my mind. Like, if I have something and it's a hop-in genre right now, hey, great. But as I discussed in the last episode, I am such a slow writer. Like, my pace is so slow that I better be invested. Like, I better be emotionally interested in telling this story, because I don't have the stamina to stick with, at my pace, to stick with something I don't care about. There's no possible way. Like, I've got to be so obsessed and enraptured, or whatever other terms you want to use. I've got to be so invested in telling this tale that I will keep with it even when it's hard and slow going and it's just a slog. And I have a lot of emotions about this because I'm in a scene right now that I'm writing that's a fucking slog. Like, I've just been on it for weeks. I'm at least 8,000 words into this sex scene, dude. And like, I was telling you the other day, I had a night that I had my document open, and in an hour I wrote 4 words. 4.
Yep.
Like, that is not productive. So I've got to be invested, and I can't be like hopping on any kind of bandwagon. Like, I don't write fast enough. Maybe if I was a much quicker writer, that could be something I would consider more, but I just got to write what I need to write because I'm too slow.
Right. And that makes perfect sense. If you weren't invested in it and you weren't passionate about it, then you would just give it up and walk away at some point.
Yeah, like, I'm very, my husband has called me the busiest, lazy person he's ever seen. And I think this is a pretty good assessment of me. And, I would like to think of it as being extraordinarily efficient with my time. I just like to be very particular about how I spend my free minutes. So, again, if I'm not invested, I'm not going to waste time on it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I think also, at least for me, is that when I started reading romance, and I think maybe this is something that's very particular to the time that we are in right now. When I started reading romance, of course, I was going online and looking at other authors, and I found authors by literally doing a search, and then I started finding the online communities. And I think we can't have a discussion about why romance without at least addressing in some fashion the communities that have grown up around even different genres of romance or tropes in romance. Mm-hmm. But it's also true with other genres too, like science fiction and fantasy and whatnot. There are these now communities that have grown up around these genres and these styles of books, and in particular for us, romance, and we become involved with them. And one of the things, and I touched on this a little bit, is that this particular community is very supportive. Now, you can go into other communities, and you know as well as I do, they can be extremely toxic.
I haven't immersed myself enough, but I know that does go on because I hear it from other people. But I will say that I'm not super active, and I know some of this has to do with like social media and how the algorithms show you things that you've already kind of interacted with. But I am in some groups that are not, they're like sci-fi fantasy author groups, fantasy author or ancient Greek mythology author, stuff like that is related to what I do, because I also have those, you've read, that is important to my plot as well. And I'm not settling for just the, yes, I want the romance in there, but I also will insist that the other part be acceptable to the other genre as well, as far as expectations. So I'm in some of those groups. And I'll be honest, someone will post something and they'll have a question about some world building thing or this character, or they'll show it what do you think of this cover I might get or whatever. And the comments are just, there's some supportive comments, but there's definitely a lot of comments that are tearing people down, or that's the wrong way. You shouldn't do it that way. This way is the only way. This is the better way. And definitely in a lot of those comments, I feel that the ulterior motive, even if the person doesn't recognize it, is some underhanded backpatting. Look at me, I'm, in and smart, and I know the correct way. Everyone look at me. Right. And I don't get that feel in the romance writing community so much. I'm not saying it would never happen. There's always someone that is I am the one who knows all.
Sure.
But for the most part, someone will put up, we'll have an author group and someone will be like, hey, help me with my blurb. This is what I have so far. And a bunch of people will jump in, and nobody's going to be like, this blurb sucks. This is not the way to do it. No one is going to approach it like that. Everybody is like, oh, well, maybe if you change this word, it would feel more immediate. Or maybe maybe it's a little long and you could cut this section maybe. But the way people approach stuff is so much more I want to help you succeed. I am your author buddy and I will help you. I want you to go out there and sell 1 million books. Whereas other communities, it just seems and this is not a rule. I can't speak to this. I don't exist in those communities as much, but I have seen examples where I feel there's a lot of intellectual snobbery going on.
Yes.
And I find that very tedious.
Yeah.
I just want to come in there and get information. I don't need some random person to tell me why I'm wrong or whatever.
Or what I'm doing is wrong, or even the ones that drive me nuts. And I notice this a lot in my history forums, is the ones that are that basically say you shouldn't be asking that question. If you can't do the research yourself, then you don't belong here, and you're expecting other people to do your work for you. And you're right, it is. It's those kinds of comments and those kinds of posters.
What's hilarious about that comment, that you're the expecting other people to do your work for you. So you mean when I quote research and I read a book written by another guy or woman or whatever, and that's not another person doing the work for me? They wrote the whole fucking book. Like, how is this any different than me going to the library? Like, I don't know. It's the same people that, like, you're just innocently trying to ask a question. Like, sometimes you poll your hive mind of social media friends. Hey, guys, does anybody know? Or, like, what does this mean? Or whatever. It's like, I just want to interact with my friends and get an answer. Like, yes, I could... Because you always get the one person, just Google it. Why aren't you Googling it? Like,
yes,
I'm like,
yes.
You know, yes, I could well Google it, but perhaps, I don't know if you ever considered this, I've asked this question because I enjoy interacting with my, online friend community. Like, why do you have to get so angry about it?
Right, or God forbid, somebody out of my online friends might actually have already done a tremendous amount of research and might be able to direct me to someplace that is more helpful than the first random search thing that comes up in Google.
Exactly. They can be like, yeah, don't go there. That, that site is a wretched hive of scum and villainy or whatever. Don't go there. Right.
But literally, it's funny that you brought that up, because literally I have been on history forums where people have argued that you shouldn't be using information from other authors. What do they call it? There's primary, secondary, and tertiary sources.
Right.
So unless you're going to the fucking Library of Congress and pulling source documents, you're doing it wrong.
Oh, yeah. Unless you're at the archaeological dig yourself, brushing off the bones.
Are you kidding me, motherfucker? So you're telling me that no author like Charles MacDonald or any of them that have these huge bibliographies.
Everybody had to suck somebody's titty at one point.
Exactly. You're telling me that's
standing on the shoulders of giants.
Bullshit and fake? Get the hell out. But no, there are these...
We've riled Shane. We've riled him.
Well, yes, because I've seen it firsthand. Unfortunately, I've never experienced it as an author per se, because I've never written in those genres.
Because we've had the luxury to be in this community where, for the most part, people don't act like that. I'm not saying there's not. Listen, I'm sure we've both witnessed some assholery, because in any group, there's going to be a subset.
Absolutely.
Like, you just can't avoid it. It's how people are. But for the most part, and the other thing is just the lack of competitiveness in general.
Yes.
Like, there's so much, I wish to help you succeed. Like, when you're a new author, people will come at you. They'll be like, here's this resource, and let me help you, let me tell you this, and ask me all your questions. And it's like, other places, it's like, well, you're just out there in the forest alone with your staff and going to walk and hope you don't get attacked by giant spiders. I don't know. It's like...
Yeah, and even if you do see somebody else, it's like, don't talk to that person. You need to find your own way. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, it's like... and again, I'm not going to go off on a tangent of not writing related stuff, but I think that there's just there's two kinds of people. There's the kind of person who climbs up and then is like, okay, the rest is your problem. I'm not, I suffered, so you should have to suffer. And then there's the other kind of person that's like, I suffered and I don't want you to suffer. Let me help you.
Right, exactly.
And more of the second kind I find in our community.
That's right. And that's, again, part of what, in all honesty, in my particular case, it's why I'm here right now. If Cynthia hadn't reached out to Jennifer Benet, and Jennifer Benet hadn't said, yeah, let me help you, let me talk to him, I wouldn't be here right now. I guarantee you.
I wouldn't be here either, because I have had, people around me that I can ask them 900 questions like a 5-year-old and kind of at least get a direction. I mean, I'm not saying I've done no research on my own of anything, but like, at least you got someone that could act like a compass.
Yeah, or at least tell you, yeah, you're going in the right direction. Or, like I said before, who can say, okay, so yeah, I know you did some research. Obviously, I can tell you did some research because you're quoting this or you're bringing this up. You need to be careful about that. Let me give you my experience and blah 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 blah. that's the kind of people that you find in our community. You find it not only with authors, but you find it with readers too.
Yes.
Readers will come to you
They're
and say,
so sweet.
yes, yes. They'll say, oh, I love that. Would you be interested in me beta reading for you? I've had my beta readers, my early beta readers. That's how they became my beta readers. Not because I threw out some big ad and said, I need beta readers.
Right.
They said, I read your fanfic and I loved it. And are you writing a book? Are you thinking about writing a book? If you are, I would love to beta read it or alpha read it. And then they're giving me feedback, which both you and I know, and I think most authors know, is critical when you're actually writing.
Yeah.
Because a good beta reader, a good alpha reader will give you feedback like, I'm really invested in this story. Or even more importantly, this is kind of dragging right now. You might want to tighten this up. That's how I came and found, or those people found me.
And our reader community is keeping us alive. Like, I mean, first of all, literally, I have food in my fridge thanks to readers who are interested in being entertained by the kind of weird stuff I want to write, which is awesome. Because as you said, I discovered there were other weirdos out there like me, and I didn't have to, I was like, oh, okay, great, you like this stuff. But like, they're emotionally keeping me alive. I don't know about you, but it's like the beta reader feedback is what, but even, you put the book out and for people to, they join your Facebook group and they're like, oh, I love this book so much. I could, what, even the littlest comment will make your whole day. It's It makes you want to keep grinding and doing the books. You know what I mean? Like even the littlest email of someone saying, oh, I really like this one,
character or this
and
one
then some people get crazy and write, big old long reviews. And then you're just, high for a week. Like, I'm going to frame this.
Yeah. Well, and you bring up a good point, though. Readers writing reviews. We have a tendency to have readers who will write reviews and write very passionate reviews. And you look at some of the other genres and you see that either the reviews are very critical, like I hate to say this.
The intellectual snobbery as it play once again.
It is. It's like, well, now I'm going to. It becomes like a venue for armchair historians or armchair fantasy aficionados to say, okay, well, I'm going to tell you exactly why this doesn't compare to Game of Thrones, because obviously, if it doesn't have the same meter and blah 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 as Game of Thrones, it's a lesser work, if you know what I mean. I mean, there's that whole. I'm a professor.
And it's only Game of Thrones if it's from the Game of Thrones region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling fantasy.
Exactly. And it's maddening. It is very maddening. It's because there's a tonal quality.
It's like, look how well read I am.
Yeah.
It's not, which also goes to the thing that, like, yes, nice reviews of our books will make our whole day or a whole week sometimes. But that we have to remember as authors that reviews are for other readers.
Yeah.
If they make you happy, great, but they're for other readers. And people that write reviews like that, that's for their own ego too. For them to say, oh, well, this book was but the things you were just saying.
Yeah, it's a way for them to stroke their own ego. And okay, so yeah, the argument can be made, well, they need that. They need the opportunity to do that. And I get that, but it can be very disheartening when you read a review like that and you're like, but you're not telling me anything other than your opinion. And your opinion is important, but I don't want to hear how many books you've read. I would really like it if you would talk about this particular book. Now, I don't see that as much in romance. Again, coming from a background where I was used to read a tremendous amount of history, I saw that a lot. Mm-hmm. It's like they're going to take the opportunity to review a book, and 75% of the review is them reiterating all the other books that they've read. And when this was talked about in this book, I took away. And it's like, I don't really want to know that. How is the book that you're reviewing? How was that book? Because that's what I'm interested in.
I think some of this is unique to romance because romance is such a I'm going to make a weird analogy here. And I gotta be honest, when it's erotic romance, it is kind of adult industry adjacent, let's be honest.
Sure, absolutely.
In the way that the porn industry has been at the forefront of every kind of media advancement you can think of, I think romance is that way in the entertainment fiction world. Because our, romance readers and writers as a online community just seem to be way ahead of other groups. Like the way that we have figured out to gather groups of people together to talk about stuff, to have various events, to market, to interact with our readers. It seems like romance is always doing it first and then everyone else is catching up. Like there's a local group where I live that meets. That's I won't name the group, but I've been to some meetings and it's just been like, it's been exhausting how out of the loop people are.
Yeah.
Like there's just a whole world out there of stuff going on that they have no idea what is happening. And I think we get some of those awesome types of reviews and those really like wonderful soul affirming interactions with our readers because of the nature of this community. Because, without getting into, I don't have exact numbers in front of me, but romance as a genre of entertainment fiction by far outsells other genres. It just does. And sometimes I think there's a little sour grapes, which is why other genres are like, looking down their nose at romance, because they're mad because those authors are expending an equal amount of effort, making their awesome books. And they're like, why the hell does this other book that's about relationships, heaven forbid, selling 8 times more copies than mine?
Right.
Which I did not get into the genre because I learned way after that romance was the bigger seller. I would not have actually known that.
And me either. I mean, I wouldn't have been writing the stories, or maybe I shouldn't say that. I wouldn't maybe have hidden the stories that I was writing for Cynthia for I did. If I had really known just how empowering the community was, even back then, I think I might have actually said, oh, okay, well, then maybe this is viable. But I didn't know that. I didn't believe it, first of all, because I lived in ignorance in that particular fashion. And it wasn't until I was drawn into it that I really realized, oh, okay, so yeah, sure. Not only are these people interested in the kinds of things that I've been writing, but they're supportive.
Right.
And they're not just tearing authors down or other readers down. They're actually helping them out. And you're going, oh, let me help you with this, or let me help you with that, or let me offer this advice. It was such a supportive environment as an author to be in.
Yeah, it's like, it's one thing to get started, but that, your fellow authors that want to help you out, the readers that are super supportive and positive, all of that is what keeps us in it.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
not, I was going to actually bring this up too, and I of your books, so far they're all romance. Like I've got at least 2 things I can think of right now that are technically not romances, and another one that's been shelved that will be back soon enough that is not a romance. But I think enough of my stuff is that I guess I qualify to be in the genre. Like I have a gothic horror that has some, it has some erotic and maybe a little bit of romantic elements in it, but it's essentially a horror. And then my one fantasy, series that I will finish one day, I don't hear about it, is technically a fantasy series, and it has some romance in it.
Yeah,
but it is not in and of itself a romance, because there's a lot of criteria I don't think it meets, because it's not the central plot.
Okay. And
The Sinner and Virtue is definitely not a romance. That is dark, erotic horror.
Yeah. I will give you on both of those, because I know the other one that you're talking about too. However, I will say that one of the things that we talked about a little while ago is that is central to romance is the interaction of people and their relationships, and both of those books excel at that. So yes, maybe they're not at their core romance, but they still have those elements that are part of what we consider important to be.
It's still the relationships. It's still, people's mental and emotional states that I want to examine about, I can say this without being spoilery. For example, in Emperor, the thing I wanted to examine was, if a person gets thrust into a role that they don't want, but that role is actually probably that is a thing that person is just, their personality is meant to do that thing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you do? Like, well, how does that person react? What do they do? How do they handle it? You know what I mean? Do they accept the role? Do they reject it? Like, how do they battle this idea in their head that, like, I don't want to, in the case of that story, the protagonist does not wish to be thrust into a leadership position. However, as you watch his character, you're like, yeah, but you're a leader. Come on.
I know.
What is he going to do about it?
Right. I don't want to be spoilery, but God, I could go on about that.
I'm going to torture people for 3 whole books figuring out what he wants to do about it. So sorry.
But even in the first book,
apologize ahead of time.
There are layers to his character that are slowly peeled away, and you realize things about him before he even realizes it about himself. And that is the kind of thing that romance seems to excel at. Is
really like examining.
Right. And sure, a lot of times it's about sexual relationships.
Sure, but those are important.
But
most people are involved in those things and have thoughts on them.
Listen, at its very core, sex is what allows us as human beings to continue as a species.
Right.
Okay?
We're not the type of species that's just throwing sperm at each other. Like, we gotta,
the female lays the eggs in the sea bottom, and then a random male comes by and goes, okay, and just squirts out some.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's not the way it works. Part of what it drives us sexually is, first of all, of course, the need to procreate, but it's also it's all tied up in how we relate to each other as human beings.
Right. There's all kinds of there's power games going on.
Right.
There's all kinds of stuff happening. There's
the
emotional baggage that has to be addressed, and all of that fascinates me, and which is why I'm writing the stuff.
Right. And the wants and needs of two or humans to be social creatures. Not all humans. Because there are those people that just want to be left alone. And even we at times just want to be left alone. But still, by and large, we have this need to connect with other people. And romance explores that desire and that need and that drive to connect. Yeah, it does.
And I think for us, because we're writing dark or darkish romance, I mean, I don't know. We could go on a whole nother debate on a different episode about like what constitutes dark romance and all this stuff. And so I've been lately more categorizing myself as dark-ish because there's stuff out there that's like way more like intense than what I'm writing. But it's still, I definitely know a lot of my content is still dark enough to put a lot of people off. But I think those of us that are focusing on the darker side of things, you're talking about how we all have this desire to, most of us have this desire to connect with other people, and often sexually. How that desire even can crop up. It's like a weed. It's like it could be the worst possible environment. And here it comes.
Yep.
And I'm also fascinated with that, like the whole dandelion aspect of desire. That it's just like everything is awful. How is this even how? Just how?
Right. Yeah,
Weirdest boner right now. Like, why is this happening?
But it's true. It's absolutely true. It's exploring that. It's exploring, why is this mushroom growing in this cave with no light?
He said mushroom growing in a cave. Like, did you plan it, or was it like the most perfect fucking metaphor that has ever existed in the history of mankind?
You set it up for me. Okay, you totally set it up for me. It was like, okay, I know exactly.
That is amazing. Like, I will preserve this for posterity. Like, I'm just... But it's floored at how fantastic that is.
But it's true. It is one of those things in dark romance, especially. It's like even in this cave of utter blackness and despair, there's something growing. And okay, I could go off on it. And it's rising. And
I swear to God, if the word tumescent happens, like, I'm out. No, I'm just kidding.
But it is. It's
and I like that myself in the challenge aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of my stories, when it boils down to it, were challenges to myself, like, this dynamic seems like it would be impossible. How can I make it happen?
Oh my
This
God.
series of events seems like it's ridiculous. And now it's a challenge to me to make it happen in a way that people will go along on the journey and believe it and accept the people's motivations and go, okay. Whereas if you would just tell someone the elevator, pitch or description of the story that's in like 2 sentences, they'd be like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's stupid. Nobody will ever read that.
Right. Or it's like, how that's not a thing.
It's not, it would never work that way. You can't possibly tell that story.
I mean, that was my wanting to do the Medusa story. I wanted to challenge myself to be like, okay, what if Perseus fell in love with Medusa instead? Which that in and of itself is not, I mean, you can figure out how to make a romance. Okay. My challenge I've been enjoying is, there, among others, there's a lot of them, but just the physical challenge of I'm writing a whole romance where these two can't make eye contact.
Yeah, right.
It's like the eye contact is a lot.
I know. Well,
I'm 8,000 words into a sex scene and these people haven't looked at each other.
Right.
Like somebody's always got to have their eyes closed.
And that is a challenge. And yet it's a challenge that, sure, on, like you said, doing the elevator pitch, people are going, no, nobody's going to want to read that because you're, looking deeply into her eyes is a key thing in romance.
Well, yeah, because
that's
human beings, as since we're talking about human beings interacting, we watch each other's body language, facial language,
right,
to assess what the other person is feeling and what we're going to do about it.
Right. Absolutely.
I mean?
And you take that away, so now you only have the other senses to
exactly,
draw.
And you have the other things that they can see, if they can see anything or are feeling. Yeah, so that's been an interesting challenge to do. And a lot of my stories have been, how do I, the last dominant was a mental challenge. I'm like, okay, I want a dom and a sub, but I want neither one of them to go into it knowing that they have that tendency.
Right.
Like, I want, and some of that was just me being like, okay, I feel like so many DS-themed stories, it's like the dom already knows that they're the perfect dom, and they already are aware of this about themselves, and the sub already knows that they're a sub, or, that one's more common, that maybe the sub doesn't know, and the dom will show them. But it's like the dom always has all their shit together. You know what I mean? Like, they already know the whole situation and the whole system and all that stuff.
They got the kit bag.
Yeah,
they got the kit bag.
Right. I wanted to write something where they didn't know that they had that until they were confronted with a situation where it cropped up.
Right.
And neither did the sub either. And they're not the personality types that, you would assume would be this or that or the other. So they're all little challenges. That's part of why I write this stuff is I want to have the challenge of doing something, whatever that may be.
Yeah, and again, in romance, you have that opportunity.
Right.
It's not as common to have that kind of opportunity in other genres because the focus isn't on that. The focus is on magic, or it's on, outlining the history.
Something going on in the world building, which is, it is fine. And I'm not disparaging any of that because I read all those things, and I like them. But
it's not, again, this whole episode has been about why we as authors are not writing in those genres, why we're writing romance. And that is, the biscuit right there is it's because that's what we're passionate about. It's
because when I watch, a TV series that is sci-fi or whatever, or it's a detective show or something, yes, I'm following the plot, but as a tangent, I will almost always be like, debating who would make a good couple or who should get together or what are the writers doing? Why are they, having these people to get together and not those people or whatever? Like, I'm obsessed with it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is not the point of this show. I'm like, I don't care.
But that's the way our brains think.
Yeah.
I talked about that in the last episode about being very Walter Mitty, and it's true. I don't watch a lot of TV, but when I do,
and thus fanfics were born in the universe.
Exactly. I will start trying to what do they call it? Ship characters.
Yeah. I haven't used that term because I honestly, this is stupid. Am I too old to say that? Like, I feel like I haven't earned being able to say a term ship. I'm like, I'm not on Tumblr. Like, I haven't earned being able to use the newfangled language of the kids these days. I don't know. But that is exactly what is happening.
Yeah. If somebody's going to hang me up for that, go for it because I don't care. It's the term that comes to my mind when I talk about that sort of thing. So I'm going to use it.
It's probably the correct term. I just am eschewing it because I feel like I'm not cool enough to say it, I guess.
Well, believe me, you are. You can. I give you permission.
Okay. I have Shane's permission. It is all okay now.
So let's talk a little bit here. We're getting close to the where we should probably be wrapping this up. But what are your thoughts on where we are now in the romance world in terms of writing as an author, and where do you think we are going to be 10 years from now? I mean, you started doing this long before I did, so you have a much better feel for this, for what you've experienced in the time that you've been writing. And so I'm kind of putting you on the spot because you started out with, I want to say a traditional publisher, but you started out with a publisher. Is that correct?
I had out already at least 2 or 3 books. I had all, if not most of my pirate series was already out. Oh, and that was on Amazon already.
I'm sorry, I did not realize that.
Oh, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. You're not like the curator of my publishing history. You don't have to know that stuff.
Yeah.
This guy. You haven't stalked me well enough, sir. No, I'm just kidding. No, I had, and the things that were in my pirate series were on Literotica, and I decided in the middle of writing the first one, that's the novel, that I would, I'm like, you know what, when I get done with this after a while, I think I'm going to take a chance and attempt to self-publish. I think I have enough friends that kind of are already in those waters and could probably tell me what to do. You know, if they can do it, why can't I do it? Sure. That kind of thing. And so I had at least 1 or 2 things out, and then I went to one of the last, they had the RT convention, the Romantic Times. Is that what the acronym was?
I think
it was the big one. The big, right. It's the Comic-Con of, you know, author conventions, reader and writer conventions. So right. I went to that one in Vegas in, I don't remember what year, 2015 maybe?
Okay.
I'm guessing. It could have been 2016. I don't know. But anyway, I went to that and I didn't know anybody. And I paid to go for the whole week, man. Like the whole shebang, the expensive one. I got the hotel. My poor husband had to put up with it because he's bored all day because he's not, you know, he hasn't paid to be in the event. Right. So he's just like, okay, I guess I'm going to be here in the hotel. Anyway, so I went to his parents live there, so he was able to go hang out with them, although I'm sure that after that became, you know, he was done with that after a while too.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, you know, I don't know fucking anybody, man. Like, even my online friends, like, none of them were there, except I managed to, like, cross paths by one day with Livia Grant. Who was barely, like, I texted her and she's like, oh yeah, I'm here, but I'm flying out tonight, but if you come up right now. And she was also, she had a book out or some books out with this small publisher. And she's like, you know, they're doing a small mini convention with the publisher. And I asked, and it was okay if you can come up and sit with us and listen to the things, you know. And at the time I was like, oh, look at me, I'm being included. And also I was very excited to meet, this is the first time I had met anyone who was one of my online author buddies who right. You know, I only know as a profile picture. So we met, but for not very long because she had to leave. But it was fun. And then I kept hanging out with the other authors and people that were associated with that publisher. Because I barely had met them in a hotel room, but they were the only faces I knew. So I was like, hello, I'm your new friend. I didn't know anybody. And at that time, a very sweet woman, Maggie Ryan, when she eventually edited some of my books and did a very awesome job about it. She was really nice to me, and I don't know why I just gelled with her. I just liked the whole cut of her jib, and I would see her and kind of walk along with her, and she's like, well, I'm going to this thing where the publisher is, you know, they had an event where there's different publishers in a ballroom, and they had a table, and you could pitch your book. Oh, it's like, you could come pitch something to them. I'm like, well, I don't really know if I have anything that's for that publisher. Like, just, you know, because a lot of small publishers are niche. They focus on certain genres and tropes and stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I have anything for them. I'm like, what the heck? So I hadn't planned to do any of this. You know, if there's people planning elevator pitches and practicing. So I just was like sitting at a table. I'm like, well, I have this one book. I'm in the middle of writing it, which was Gallows Pole at the time. And they were interested in the concept. And so I sent like what I had, which was like, I don't know, a couple chapters to one of the editors at the time. And they were into it. So, but yeah, I had a couple books out already. And then I had Gallows out with the publisher, and then another, I don't know how many other books I put out that were just on my own.
Yeah.
And then there eventually was The Last Dominant that was also with the publisher. But personally, after having tried both things, I think self-publishing is the way I like to go.
Okay, good. And that's kind of why I put you on the spot in a sense, because you did it both ways. Mm-hmm. And you just said self-publishing is, in your opinion, the way that you would go. If you had, let's just say, if you had to do it all over again, you'd probably just go with self-publishing.
Probably. And I'm a control freak. You know what I mean? Like, I want to have, I mean, they were nice enough to let me, because they saw already that I was making book covers, so they let me do mine. But it's like, I want control over that stuff.
Right.
I want to say when things go on sale. I want to say how much they cost, the price of the books. I want to be able to do, I want to move all the levers.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And, you know, granted, as a small publisher, their cut of the royalties was not the crazy amount that it would be if you were with like a huge, you know, big 5 New York publisher. They take a lot. Like, you're going to be getting lucky 12 to 15% by the time it's all done and everybody's paid. But still, I mean, even still, as a self-published author, you still get a lot more of your, you know, you get a lot more of your own money out of it. So
you have to do the work, but you still get, you reap all the benefits.
And a lot of the work is annoying. You know, a lot of marketing is exhausting, and I wish I didn't have to do so much of it, but you do.
Right.
And you know, you have to do the work. But there's a lot of things that I go, I'm willing to figure this out. I am able to read, I can read instructions. I can go online and learn how to do something. You know, I learned how to format my own books before I had a program that did it. I was doing it by hand. Right. But it's like, I'm patient enough to read a description that's fairly cut and dried, even if it's long and tedious, and I can accomplish this if I am just patient. And I'm definitely the turtle and not the hare, the tortoise and not the hare. So I'm willing to be patient and do things myself.
Right. Well, and again, much like we discussed earlier, you also in this community can find a lot of help.
Yes, people will help you.
Right. So it makes being in the indie part of this industry a little bit more accessible, and I think a little bit more, to me, more attractive. I had the luxury of knowing people like you and other authors who told me their stories about where they started and working with small independent publishers. And in some cases, I went through an agent and the agent then found me. So I had the luxury of hearing all of that and then making my own choice. And I chose, of course, to go completely indie. I never approached and have never been approached by a publisher. And even if a publisher came to me, right today, sitting here where we are right now, I don't know that I would go through with a publisher because you do lose some control.
I heard in another author forum, and this number will sound outlandish, but this is something that was said by an author that's established and is, you know, well known and makes a lot of money in romance. They're like, unless a big publisher is going to cut you like a 6-figure advance, don't bother.
Yeah.
And to me, that, first of all, I have never made that much money in a year in my life. So exactly. That sounds like crazy talk to me. Okay. I don't, lest anyone think that Eris is over here, like, you know, sitting on her chase and being fed grapes by oiled up, you know, people. That is not what is going on.
Wait.
I am in my Walmart shorts right now, I assure you.
Hold on. I've been to your place, and that what you.
But
just
I was you. I made feed the grapes, so that doesn't count. And I didn't pay you.
That's neither here. No, you didn't, as a matter of fact, and that's another discussion offline for another time. I took
full advantage, anyway.
Because I'm still waiting for that check. No.
It's in the mail.
It's in the mail. No, it's. I've heard that same basic story, and I think it's from my outsider's experience. Now, just being kind of an insider, it seems to be true. And where I was going with this when we first started is that seems to be the direction. And I'm making this as completely as an opinion and my experience. That seems to be the way a lot of our industry is going, is towards self-publishing.
I think you're right. I think people want the control over their assets You know what I mean? Like, you can't
Yeah.
pivot when the contract with the publisher says you don't have rights to do X, Y, and Z if you want to.
Right.
It's like, if I decide I want to make an audiobook of one of my books, well, then I can go do it.
Yep.
The only thing stopping me is the paywall of paying, a voice narrator, which,
Right.
eventually you can get over the hump. There's a lot of paywalls in this industry. Even
That's
for
true.
indie people, there's a lot of, you got to be able to pay for a cover and pay for an editor and all this other stuff. So that, is mildly prohibitive. But the other thing I think that people are kind of over is they realize that, like, they don't have to be dependent on the industry gatekeepers that say that, well, nobody wants to read this content.
Right.
And we found that some, self-published authors that absolutely people want to read that content, and they're, making a living and doing a great job of it,
That's right. That's right.
Because publishers only want to sell what has already sold.
That's correct. They're low risk. They're risk
Exactly,
averse.
which I get, because they're running a whole business and they're risk averse because they've got, an entire food chain of people that have got to be paid and all
Absolutely.
that stuff.
Absolutely. So if you...
But that's not my problem as an author. Like,
exactly.
I just want to be creative and I don't want to deal with any other nonsense. So.
And independent authors are entrepreneurs, because really it is. You're an entrepreneur. You've got an idea, you've got a story, you write it, and then you put it out there. You market it, you do all the things to put it in the right platforms. And
you've got to be responsible for all that stuff.
And you know what? And you're responsible for it. And if it makes money, then you're like any entrepreneur. Woohoo! I scored. I did great.
Yeah.
My restaurant, my store, my whatever is taking off. Or wow, it didn't work. It people weren't interested in it. I didn't market it correctly, or whatever.
And that's where our community comes in and is awesome, because they a lot of times will save our ass from stepping, in the pit that we didn't see, like, before we do it.
That's right.
Like, you'd be like, well, I was thinking about doing this, and I was like, oh no, let me tell you, that's going to be a whole situation. Like, let me tell you what happened to this guy. You know what I mean? And then you go, oh, thanks for saving me. I almost, screwed myself there.
Right. And I can speak to that from experience. And that may be a story for another episode.
You're right. And it doesn't happen every time. And, it's funny, too, because I have seen it happen in reverse, where someone, I remember an author that was around that I haven't seen this person around in a while, but a few years ago they were around. And they were, very frequently posting on social media. I just can't sell any books. Like the refrain, like, just people aren't buying and I don't understand. And, the rest of us that were around this person were like, have you tried this? Or, we think you would sell more books if you did X, or if you considered Y, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And this person was not open to hearing anything. Like, you would give them suggestions and it was like, they already knew everything. Well, it's like, well, if you know everything, why aren't your books selling? Like, I don't mean this in a mean way, because we can make, again, we've got so many other episodes that could be, every creative person, whether they're an author or they're a painter or they're a musician, has got to come to terms with themselves as to where they fall on the art money spectrum.
That's right.
Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Do you want to be pure art or pure money, or somewhere in the middle that's comfortable for you? And I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, I'd like to think I lean towards the art end, but I'm also trying to eat. So there's some decisions that I often choose to make because I'm like, well, yeah, but I got to sell books.
Right.
But this person was just like, they wanted both. And you often cannot have both. Like, this person wanted to write, the way they wanted to write it, for an example, they had really, really long books, like 800 pages.
Oh,
which,
ouch.
if you're, Robert Jordan, that's expected. Well, nobody's Robert Jordan now because he's passed. But
right.
But in romance, that would be a ridiculously long book. Like, you would need to have an established audience to want to buy a book that long, to trust that, I'm willing to buy an expensive 800-page book because I already know that my experience with this author is going to be great.
But if it's
when people don't know you from Adam, they're not they're like, I'm not investing in this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that was just one example, but this person we were trying to help. We wanted to help, and they wouldn't hear any of it. They're like, help me. And we're like, okay, we're helping you. And they're just like, but I don't want to do that. I refuse to do this. I refuse to do it. Like, I didn't want to compromise any of their principles. I'm like, well, then you're not going to sell books. I mean,
Yeah, and at that point, with any endeavor in life, if someone offers you good advice based upon them having been involved in the industry or the business or whatever for, X number of years and having that body of experience, and you just ignore it, then again, it still comes back to the results and the responsibility.
It's on you. Yeah.
On you. Exactly. If you chose to ignore the advice, then if you fail, then you failed because you made that decision, not because you went to a publisher and the publisher made a bad choice and the book failed.
Right.
It's one of the things that's very empowering about being an indie author, but it's also it's
intimidating. And I see why a lot of people don't do it. Like, I get it. Everybody's got different personalities. We all are wired differently to like interact with the world in different ways. And some people, that is not their personality. They don't, they don't want to go out there and like have to research how to do every damn thing and like spend a lot of effort focusing on the marketing and all the other business parts of it. Like they're like, I'm not doing all that shit.
Right.
And that's fine. And then, so, okay, be with the publisher, because that is the environment they need in which to write. But there's other people that are just like, I am willing to take this on. I will do it. I'm willing to pay this price of being annoyed with all this responsibility because I wish for this payoff bad enough to tolerate this. Right.
And God bless them for if that's what they need and want and it works for them.
Yeah, you got to know yourself.
That's right. Then that's great. And more power to them. I just have a feeling that as our industry shifts more towards, independent authors handling all of it, it's kind of almost like the Uber Lyft model with their drivers. It's you're your own boss.
Yeah.
And there are risks, and
which makes complete sense because we don't get health insurance either.
Right. Well, there you go.
Sorry, just being a smart ass about the whole situation.
But it's true. I hate to say it, but it's true. There are pros and cons to it. Although in our industry, even if you're with a publisher, you still ain't getting health insurance. Sorry.
Right. For me, I think the biggest pro to self-publishing, even aside from the money thing, which I need every penny I can get, but it is just the lack of gatekeeping. Like yes, there are more big publishers that have been willing to put out stuff with like sexual content in the romance, like blatant, not fade to black, like we're saying all the naughty words for the parts.
Right.
It's coming around more, but I still think a lot of the stuff I write is just, it's not to market, it's not trendy. I would just be, if I wrote the kind of stuff I wanted to write, I would just be, assaulting agents and stuff with manuscripts for years and years and years, and nobody would pick it up. I mean, I could be wrong, but for the most part, I think my stuff is weird enough that like
niche.
It wouldn't get picked up. And so I'm not interested in doing all that. It's like, I just, especially when there's a viable alternative out there. It's like, if there was no other alternative, okay, that's what we all have to do. But there's a way to get into this without having to go by the gatekeeper, and you darn well can make a living. So I don't see what reason I should have to stand in the line for. I just don't.
And, the other thing that you have to consider is that there's two gatekeepers in our industry. One, there's a publisher. That can be a gatekeeper if you go that route. The other gatekeeper is the 900-pound gorilla in the room, and that's Amazon.
Yes.
Because you know what? If you're not in KU and you're not selling your books on Amazon and you're going wide, that's really anymore. That's the only two options that you have. And going wide has a lot of benefits. I know a lot of authors are really keen on it right now, and there are benefits to it, but it is still a lot of work.
Yes, in fact, because it's not just, my books are just on Amazon, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I used to have, Gallows Pole used to be on Barnes & Noble. The publisher put it on there. And then a few years ago, I want to say it was like 2017 maybe, I don't remember what year, Barnes & Noble had a big purge of a lot of types of romances and things that had erotic content in them.
Mm-hmm.
And my book was in the purge, and so are many books by that publisher, because it's just the nature of those stories that publisher was putting out.
Right.
So then that was the last time I had anything on any other platform. And just to maintain familiarity with the ever evolving and ever opaque Amazon like ecosystem is almost a whole ass job.
Yes.
Like there are services to pay. There's KDP Rocket software to buy so you can mine keywords, and there's, you know, you got to keep abreast of what you can have on a cover and what you can have in a blurb. And
yes.
How to keyword and all of this stuff. Well, guess what? If you're going to go wide, you better learn how to navigate the Barnes & Noble ecosystem and the iBooks one and the Google Books one. It's just like, holy shit. Like, it's very intimidating to me. Like, it's enough for me to know the one.
Right.
However, I will say that is not what is keeping me from going wide. What is keeping me from going wide, and hey, this is the behind the scenes talk, like 60 to 75% of my income is Kindle Unlimited.
Yep.
And I do not have, like, the 30% that's left is not enough to make me eat every month. It is not. Yeah. So,
exactly.
Right, you know, until my income, like, fucking triples, which it's not going to anytime soon, if ever. Like, that's where I'm staying because I've got to make a living.
That's right.
And a lot of people are like, you can do great if you do wide. I'm like, yes, but and I'm not saying I never will. I'm not ruling it out. But right now, where I'm at, I do not have the time and energy bandwidth to go learn all of that stuff right now.
And then maintain it, because it's not just
maybe
learning.
In the future, but right now, the things I'm prioritizing to put my energy in are other things right now.
That's correct, and I'm in the same exact boat. And I don't even have nearly the backlist that you do. But I just
it's very surreal that I even have anything such like a backlist, like surreal moments in being an author.
I know, but you do. And I just think that, you know, we can't right now escape Amazon. It has, I don't want to say a chokehold on us, but it is
kind of
where we got to go. We got to play in their court. They're the,
and that is very stressful at times because again,
it is.
A lot of their, I don't want to say policies because policies are actually written down. A lot of their, you know, internal I'm missing the word, but the stuff on which they base their decisions to do one thing or another, SOPs, I guess, it is opaque to us.
Yep.
And so that is exhausting and frustrating. There has been definitely, at least in the US, I can say, a culture of morality police lately clamping down on this kind of content and that kind of content. So you got to be really super careful how you word your blurb and don't have it, which can also create problems because I'm not trying to like horrify people. Like I'm not out there to be like, oh yeah, I wrote this like non-consent and I'm going to cram it down your throat. Fuck you. Like I don't want people reading my content that don't want to read it. If that is morally wrong to you or it's traumatic and it's going to trigger you, like, I am respectful of that. I don't want you to read that. Like, you go find content that is good for you. And I would like to say in my blurb, hey man, there is, you know, potentially, I hate using the word triggering, but we'll go with that. There's potentially triggering content in here. So warning, if you don't like X, don't read this book.
Exactly.
And you can't use that. You can't say this book has rape in it. You can't have that in the blurb. Your book will get kicked off. You can't even publish it.
Right.
Like, and there's all kinds of other adjacent words that cannot be in the blurb. Yep. You can't say forced. You can't say breed, although I've seen intermittently some people getting away with it, and I don't know why when they choose to do one thing or another. There's all kinds of words you cannot use. And so it's like, how do I warn people that, hey, I write some content that is considered problematic in some of my books? How do I tell people that? That's frustrating because I don't think anybody should be censored as to what they can write or not write. But yeah, I'm totally on board with warning people that there's content in there they might not like. Because I'm not trying to, you know, fuck with someone's head. Like, if you don't want to read that, then okay.
I don't have a problem with that. And I'm trying my best to tell you what you're going to be reading in this book, except that the venue in which I need to be able to tell you that information is telling me I can't use the language to tell you that.
Right, you got to be careful what category you pick for your book initially, because this is another thing about the romance genre. Romance books that have sexual content in them get policed at this fine-tooth comb level where they will kick your book off or they will put it in the adult dungeon, which that's a whole nother Oprah show. We will talk about that later. But whereas if I pick different categories for my book, which I have done, and then later put it in romance as a subcategory, it's fine.
Yeah.
And then forget about what categories I, as an indie romance author, pick. You can go out there in sci-fi and fantasy right now and find all kinds of rape going on. Mm-hmm. And ain't nobody yelling at those authors. It's not, but suddenly when it's, and I know you're the dude in the room, so I'm not trying to pick on you, but I'm making a generalization here. Suddenly, when it is fiction that is primarily written by women and for women, now it's a problem.
Right.
Now we can't have the women folk like knowing that they like to touch their own beans. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, that is actually a conversation for a completely different episode.
Because we could go on about that all day.
Yeah, and it is you talk about triggers. That is a trigger for me. Because the dichotomy and the hypocrisy is so maddening. And it just drives me nuts.
Just how romance is subject to all this additional scrutiny, whereas the same content appears in another genre and it's totally fine.
Right.
And that's ridiculous.
Of the word romance.
Right, because because we're being titillated by it. Again, yes. I hate that word so much and I don't know why. And it's not because it has tit in it, because I don't have a problem with that word.
But it's
nobody's ever cuntillated, are they?
Oh my God. This is drifting into pun territory, and I'm
That's
putting
not a pun.
I'm just saying I said drifting. I didn't say it was, but it's, and I'm going to have to safe word out here.
Okay, all right. That's fine. You're not going to escape it entirely, because I just pun, like, it just happens.
Yeah, okay.
It's organic.
And you know what? That's true. You did warn me that at some point is going to happen.
Well, that's fine. So, I'll just pun on the down low, and
there you go.
Don't notice it.
There you go. Well, we are coming up here, I think, towards the end of our segment.
I think so.
Yeah, and I want to thank you so much for talking about why romance tonight. I think it's it builds nicely upon what we were talking about, who we are from our last episode, and now I hope we've established with our audience not only who we are, but why we write, why we're writing in this particular genre.
Why this?
Right, why this, and why we are, the Not Safe for Work romance podcast, because that's the genre and that's the kind of words that we like to write.
Yes, and from here on out, we're going to talk about it even more.
That's right.
Dive into the details. Well, it sounds like this is a good place to end. So for everyone out there, you can find the Not Safe for Work podcast on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and you can follow us on Facebook, and we're also on Twitter at RomanceNSFW. That's RomanceNSFW, all one word. I am on Facebook, Eris Adderley, where you can follow my fan page or join my private group, Eris Adderley's Home for Wayward Troublemakers. I'm on Twitter at Eris Adderley, and you can also find me on Instagram. And all my dirty books, as I have said, are on Amazon, most of them in Kindle Unlimited.
And I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Just search for Shane Sterrett, or you can find me on my group on Facebook, The House of Sterrett. All my books can also be found on Amazon, available for Kindle and Kindle Unlimited, and also in paperback. Well, Eris, shall we do this again next month? I think we have a few more things we could discuss.
Okay, but I'm making you come to my house.
Oh, that's right. You know what? I don't want to go too much into detail about that, but yeah, we
just get over here. Your windmill is pining for you, I'm sure.
Oh, I'm sure it is, and my windmill better have been taken well care of.
This is not a euphemism, people. And on that note,
no, it is. It really is.
And on that note, we shall see you again next month.
All right. Night.
Good night.